Good evening to everyone. It's nice to be here, and I wonder, we've got to think what date in the calendar we are, what's the current zodiac, when were you born, and what brought you here tonight. These are some of the ideas we've been discussing throughout this course, and what I want to do tonight, I'm going to look at 3 months, 3 particular zodiacs, but with a slightly different question, meaning that the question is not so much whether these zodiacs have some sort of influence that make you do something, but more available energies, available styles that we can draw on in order to live a better life. So don't feel that if your birthday is in a particular month that you are stuck. Actually, the first week, for those who were here for week 1, which Menachem delivered, he spoke a lot about how really it says Ein Mazel Yisrael, that Jews should live beyond Mazel, beyond their zodiac, beyond whatever spiritual energy may be particularly related to them. We can go beyond that. But nevertheless, each one has certain positives and negatives, and when we consider them and we try to bring them into our lives, we can live in a better way. So we're going to be looking at it from that approach, not as something which is a handcuff or a fetter, but something which can give us new direction, can empower us. Now, there's 2 copies that everyone has here. One of them is my notes, and the other is a hexagon, colorful hexagon. And the colorful hexagon is not what we're not going to be spending most of our time on it, but I shared it with you for the purpose of showing how every month, and every month has a certain feeling or a certain sense, a certain tribe, a certain letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and there's a lot more that can be put into each triangle. So in the triangle, the editors and the teachers, this is from an institution called Gal Einai, which means to uncover my eyes, to let my eyes really see. And it's actually from a prayer of King David. King David prays, he pleads, open my eyes so I can see the secrets of your Torah. So this is it's based in Israel, an institution called Gal Einai. They've got a website in English called inner.org, and they produced this picture. And it is just it has some of the sort of central aspects connected to each month in zodiac, but there are more. And actually, what we'll be discussing tonight won't necessarily be everything that is here, because there are a number of particular aspects, and those who are into this topic may be aware of other aspects connected to the month that I'm not going to discuss tonight. But I'm going to focus on a few particular things that had meaning for me and hopefully for you, and that's what we're going to be doing tonight. Okay. So now, first month, we may come back to this a little bit, but just the main point is to notice that, as I said, it's got a month, it's got a letter. 12 out of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet are related to the 12 months. This actually comes from a very ancient book. The teachings of this book come from, our tradition has it, before even the Torah. This is a book called Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, and we have a tradition that it was teachings that Abraham would have used in his, Abraham, Avram, our forefather, and his wife Sarah, gave public speeches and wrote books, as Maimonides says, in order to develop a following monotheism. Now, most people were pagans, and they believed that actually these powers, or the stars and the zodiacs, may have been independent powers. So Abraham was teaching actually the opposite. There's only one God, but still spoke about different energies in this book. And his main theme was less the zodiacs. It was more about the letters of the Hebrew alphabet and how the letters create. So it's more framed in terms of 12 letters with power of creation. But anyway, there's the letters, there's the month, there's a tribe, there's a sense, as I said, in the bottom corner. Now, normally we have 5 senses, but for the purposes of here, we have 12, which include things that normally wouldn't be senses, like, if we talk about progress or action, these wouldn't necessarily be senses, but in terms of this, they're part of the 12 senses, and a particular more sort of a inner sphera or inner feeling, like wisdom or victory or pleasure, etc. Okay, the first month and zodiac that I'd like to discuss is Scorpio, which relates to the Hebrew month of Cheshvan. Now, when you think of a scorpion, it's not an animal you would like to have as a pet, right? I mean, had all kinds of interesting pets people have, but scorpion I don't think is high on the list. I mean, even now, you go to some places and they're trying to get people comfortable with snakes, and they have snakes twirling all around people, but I haven't really seen that with scorpions. So not necessarily very pleasant, but I don't want to give off too negative an approach and a feeling. So I'm going to focus mostly on other aspects, and with the hope that this will be something that we can all think, how can I develop this positive aspect more in my life? So I want to focus firstly and mostly on the idea of loyalty and permanence. And I do this because the Hebrew word for a scorpion, akrav, is made of 2 words. Number 1, the first 3 letters is ikar, like the main or the main thing, represents permanence, and then the last letter is a bet. One special thing about the Hebrew language is that every letter has a meaning. This is, we think, where did the word alphabet come from? Did it come from Greek to Hebrew, or did it come from Hebrew to Greek? So one indication of it coming from Hebrew is that every one of the Hebrew letters actually has a meaning, unlike in Greek, apparently. My Greek's not very good, but apparently they don't all have a meaning in Greek. They don't have meanings in Greek. So the letter bet, we've got some Israelis or Hebrew speakers. What bet, or what word is similar to that? Bait. Bet is a house, right? So we've got akrav, this scorpion. It's not necessarily very friendly, but very a strong, independent, aspect to it. But it's about ikar bayit, meaning a sort of permanent home. It's got its place. It knows what it is. It knows what it wants. Now, this can make it quite obnoxious as well. But on the positive side, it's about loyalty. It's about permanence. Now, there's a verse. There's a verse which I've written in English. Awaken your strength, O God, before Ephraim, Benjamin, and Manasseh. This was a prayer. It's in Psalms. It was a prayer that the sons of Korach said. Now, the story of Korach is one of the most fantastical stories in the Torah of the earth opening up and swallowing this rebel Korach. And there's something even more amazing in the story. It says that his sons, who were part of this rebellion, didn't die. And the Medrash talks about how they were actually, there was some sort of suction and they're getting sucked into the earth. And then suddenly midway, it stops. And there they are. Just imagine someone who has fallen off a cliff but lands on some little rock that's wedged somewhere that's jutting out a little bit, and then they're holding on over there, right? So at that point, and as they got a sort of comfortable perch there, they started thinking about life in a different way, as people might. And then they became these, ultimately they live and they become these poets, and there's a lot of prayers attributed to them. A lot of songs and prayers and poems. So in one of their prayers they say, awaken your strength, O God, before Ephraim, Benjamin, and Manasseh. Now, these three tribes are actually associated with three of the months of the Hebrew year. The months are, Ephraim is Tishrei. We also have it on in the other paper. Ephraim is Tishrei, which is connected to Libra. Benjamin is Kislev. And then Manasseh is Cheshvan that we're discussing. What's interesting in the verse is the verse puts them out of order. The order normally is, normally like when they camped in the desert, they were in order of tribes. It was first Ephraim, although he was the younger son of Joseph, then Manasseh, and then Benjamin, who was the youngest of the 12 tribes. But here it flips the order. And there's discussion in the commentaries why. It's almost flipping the order of the months. It's almost flipping the months to make it Tishrei, Kislev, and then Cheshvan. When really Cheshvan, which is the month we actually just finished over the weekend, comes before Kislev, the month that we've just begun. And we're going to, in the final session of this course, we're going to be discussing Kislev, the month that we've just begun. Now, so why do we flip the order around? What's the meaning? So let's look at some history. And as this session was advertised about how history is affected by the energies of the months, and in terms of your birthday, but I'm going to focus more in terms of past history because the future is in your hands. The past has happened already. We can connect it to the months. The future is up to you. So we've got, a lot of Kabbalah and a lot of Jewish thought in general has a, in computer language, there's just two options. It's either yes or no, right? So when the Kabbalists looked at Jewish history, it was primarily it was a binary system. We're either in a time of redemption or we're in a time of exile. And whenever something happens historically, we'd think, is that a part of a redemptive process, getting towards redemption, or is that putting us deeper into the exile? So when we think about these 3 months and the energies that they have, we think about them primarily in terms of redemption versus exile. Now, one of the things that most relate to redemption is the idea of our temple in Jerusalem. Just a little bit of history. The Jewish people came out of Egypt. In the Hebrew calendar, it was 2448, which is about 3,330 years ago. 3330 years ago. Now, it was 480 years later when King Solomon built the temple. So when the Jews got to Israel, they didn't build the temple right away. They had to develop, they had different types of government, and they similar actually to America. America, in the early days, the states were the main thing, more than the union. At least many felt that way. And then as it went along, now there's more allegiance to the country than to the states. So in the early days of Israel, it was also that way, that there was originally more allegiance to the tribes, which each one had a certain state, so to speak. And then as it went on, there became more allegiance to a country. Once there was the one who achieved sort of full allegiance to the country was King Solomon. That was the pinnacle of allegiance to the country over the states. He built the temple. And soon afterwards, the idea of states over country became dominant. When that happened, he was a Yehudi, which in English means a Jew, right? As I said last week, a Jew means someone from Judea, which is the area between Jerusalem and the Jordan River. So that's what it means if you're a Jew. So he was a Judean, which was one of the southern tribes. The northern tribes said that we feel disenfranchised. We don't have such a strong role here. And they had different complaints. The taxes were too high. What's changed in the 3,000 years? But they had different complaints that there was a bit of identity politics. This is so modern. They had a bit of identity politics. It's not when the leadership is not representative of the community, because there was too many Jews, Judeans, and not enough Benjamites and Danites and Reubenites and all the other tribes. And then the other problem was the high taxes. Okay, it could have happened yesterday. So either way, so there was this fellow Yeravam, who rebelled. After King Solomon passed away, his son becomes the next king, and Jeroboam rebels, and 10 of the tribes go with him. So that's a bit of to give us the sort of the situation. Now, King Solomon completed the first temple in the month of Cheshvan, which we're talking about now. But he didn't dedicate it, he didn't open it until 11 months later. Right? That's quite a long time between the dedication and the opening. I'm sure when the new Spirit Grow opens, we will not wait 11 months once it's ready until we open it. But it was 11 months. It was meant to be at the time when the most people are present in Tishrei. Everyone comes up to Jerusalem, and that's when he made the grand opening, and it was an amazing affair. But the month of Cheshvan missed out on that positive energy, that redemptive energy at that time. Right? This actually was not the first time a month was, so to speak, aggrieved. In the times of Moses, in the time of Moshe, the tabernacle, the Mishkan, was completed in the month of Kislev, which is the month we're in. We just began right now, on Sunday, yesterday. But he didn't dedicate it. He didn't officially open it till a few months later. So now we have two aggrieved months. We have, so to speak, we have Kislev and Cheshvan. They both need to be paid back. They're missing out on some energy. So Kislev was paid back with the Hanukkah story. The Hanukkah story was when the second temple was really dedicated. The second temple began under the dominion of Persia, and it was only after the Hanukkah story that it was really an independent government with the Hanukkah story. Now, the month of Cheshvan is still waiting to be paid back, and we are told that the third temple will be built in Cheshvan. So now, what does this all mean for us? The first two temples didn't last. They lasted 410 and 420 years respectively. The third temple is the one that lasts forever. And it's very appropriate that we've got Scorpio, Akrav, Scorpion, means Ikar Bayit, that this is the permanent home. So what does it mean to us? What type of energy are we meant to get from here? That, there are some who they're in the middle of fighting with their spouse or their children or whoever, and then someone knocks on the door. What do? Put a smile on our face and open the door. Hello. So the Akrav, the scorpion opens the door and wants to bite you. But in the home, Ikar Bayit, it's about permanence, about loyalty. And that's the idea of the third temple that lasts forever. That's why the third temple, the one which is permanent, everlasting, is in this month, Cheshvan. Actually, the original name, because the names we use for the months, Cheshvan and Kislev, all these months, are actually Babylonian. There's some suggestion that it was originally Jewish, then it was forgotten, then it was remembered while they were in Babylon. But definitely in the Tanakh, in the Jewish Bible, there's no mention till very late in the story of these months. What we call Cheshvan earlier on in our history is the month of Bull. What? What? No, Bull. Beit Vav Lamed. It's a Hebrew word, bull. Huh? Bull. Huh? No, it means the 8th month of the Jewish year, bull. But what does this word mean? Huh? Good question. What? Exactly. Okay. In slang, that's like bullseye. It probably, yeah. But one meaning for it is, what is permanence? Permanence is when you're the same no matter where we find you. In the beginning, the middle, the end. You're predictable. You're loyal. Your truth doesn't change. So the month Bull actually represents from beginning to end, I keep on track. Why? What's the first letter of the Torah? The first letter is Beit, Bereshit, in the beginning. The last letter of the Torah, that's a bit harder. It's a Lamed. The last word of the Torah is Yisrael, Israel. It ends with a Lamed. So we've got a Beit at the beginning, Lamed at the end, and in the middle letter of the Torah, would you believe, is a Vav. So this word Bull means beginning, middle, end, consistency, permanence, loyalty, right? Okay. There is another aspect here. You'll never, when you hear the word bull, you'll never think of it the same way again. Okay. There's another aspect that I'll, just because of time, we'll get less into, but there's in Kabbalah and Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, it talks about 12 senses. 5 of them are the 5 we know, with 7 other ones. And for the month of Cheshvan, there's the sense of smell. Now, I'll just suffice it to note that the first thing that happens, the biggest biblical story probably in the month of Cheshvan is the flood. If you Google Scorpio, you'll probably find some reference to water, especially if you Google it with a Jewish word, like Jewish or Kabbalah. Or so Scorpio, you'll find reference to water. One of the reasons is because the great flood in the times of Noah began in this month. It ended in this same month, a year later. That's when they left. Well, not the actual flood, but that's when they were able to safely leave the ark. And also that's when we start praying for rain. In this month of Cheshvan, that's when we start praying for rain. So there's a lot of connections with water. But the first thing that Noah does, he comes out of the ark and he makes a sacrifice, and it said God smelled the sacrifice. So we have this idea of smell right away there. It also says, we said that the third temple with Mashiach is related to this month of Cheshvan. It says that Mashiach will be able to sense the truth, like he'll smell out the truth. He'll get a whiff of the truth by smell. Sometimes when someone comes and tells you a story, you can smell, this is a Baba Maisa. They're feeding me, this is rubbish, this is baloney. So it says that Mashiach, the Messiah, will smell people out. So we've got this idea of smell. There's a lot of different symbolisms to smell and what it means to us. I mean, there's one idea of smell, that it's something that it's there, but it's something that you can't exactly put your fingers on. There's the idea, it says that smell, the sense of smell was the only one of the five senses that wasn't used in the original story with Adam and Eve and the snake. That they used their sight, their hearing, their sense of taste and sense of touch, all in the story. The only one that came out intact was the sense of smell. Actually, for those Hebrew speakers, you'll notice that the month Cheshvan, which we're discussing, this month of Scorpio, actually has the word Nachash, the letters Nun, Chet, Shin, in it. And actually, Mashiach, who's coming to fix up the snake, is the same numerical value as Nachash. They're both 358. And by the way, also on the dreidel, the Savivan, the Hanukkah spinning top, it also, if you count the four letters together, it's 358. And I'll just give you one more. There's a song about it with these words as well. Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Yimlach. If you count that all up quickly, equals the 358 as well. And there's more. So it's a very special number. But either way, so we've got this sense of smell that stayed intact, it stayed spiritual. I'm not going to focus on it too much, but just say that besides this idea of permanence and loyalty, there is two other ideas that are discussed often, which is the idea of water and smell. Month of Bull we already discussed. Okay, so we've got to have a lesson from each month. What's our lesson that we're focusing on? We're focusing on permanence, loyalty, that the stability inside the house, and predictability. Okay. Av. Now the next month we're going to focus on is Av, which is Leo. Now Cheshvan is around this time of year, around November, and Leo is around June, July, what is it? Let's count exactly. It's August. Yes, it's August. July to August. Yeah. Okay, so now a lion, you think of a lion, you might think of it in two ways. What do you think when you think of first thing that comes to mind with a lion? Fearless strength. The head of Zaka, a very wonderful organization in Israel, was just going on a holiday somewhere in Asia, and you could go on walks with lions. So he did that, and the lion jumped at him. He survived. His job, he's a wonderful person. Zaka actually help unfortunately, when people pass away in disasters or terror attacks, they actually collect the bodies afterwards. That's what they do. So thank God he survived being jumped at by a lion. But so a lion, on one hand, it's fearless, it's strong, it's majestic. On the other side, you got to keep it on side, because it could be quite destructive as well. Now, we've got, in this month of Av, we have both, historically, we have the saddest day, historically. The 9th of Av is the day from the beginning. The spies, Moses sent 12 spies, 10 of them come back with a bad report. The Jews didn't want to go to Israel. They ended up staying in the desert for 40 years. So this was the 9th of Av right from the beginning. Both of the temples were destroyed on the 9th of Av. Moses came down from the mountain with the 2 tablets, the Luchot, and that was Shivasa B'Tammuz, that was also another fast, I'm sorry. But later on in history we had the expulsion in 1492 when all the Jews had to either convert or leave Spain. That was Tisha B'Av. Yeah. For the year 1492. Yeah. Then we also had other expulsions. I think from England was Tisha B'Av, but definitely the Spanish one 1492. The First World War also began on Tisha B'Av. I was actually just in when I was in Israel. When another sad Tisha B'Av, which was I was in 2005. I was there for the summer, and the date for removal of the Jewish population from Gush Katif, which is sort of the south between Gaza and the Sinai Desert, was Sharon picked Tisha B'Av. He didn't realize it was Tisha B'Av. He was using an English calendar. It turned out to be Tisha B'Av, so it was delayed. But I was in Jerusalem, and I'm not talking. We don't talk. About the political side of things here, but it was just like there was this procession of people, and they were carrying. Because I was right near the the central Tachana Merkazit, the central train station, and they came out like sort of carrying their bags, and not very much. How much can you carry? And then they were carrying this menorah. They had a menorah apparently, like in front of their shul, a central shul, and they were carrying their bags and then carrying this menorah, and they walked from the central train station to the Kotel, to the Western Wall. It's a decent walk. They walked, and there was a lot of people who walked with them, and you could imagine the image. It was right after Tisha B'Av, and I'm thinking that there's in the Arch of Titus. There's a similar type of picture. I'm not comparing. I'm just saying that the imagery was very, just on a human level, was very. Very hard. Anyway, but that was also that for that date. Now, in the same month, the 15th of Av, which is 6 days later, was a very happy day. Okay, and to repeat again on that last point that I'm talking about the sort of the human aspect of the story. I'm not saying that those who the government decision was like, I'm just the human side of the story was just the imagery was powerful and very, yes, you couldn't not have empathy. But the 15th of Av is 6 days later in the calendar. It says it's the biggest Yom Tov in the year, the happiest day of the year. What would they do on that day? Well, of course, it's going to be a happy day of the year. They would have a public, not a ball. It was in an outdoor dance, and people would find their. They would find a date. They'd find a shidduch. Yeah, so that was the 15th of Av. Now, they did this twice a year. Do you know what the other day they would do this? Yom Kippur. I suggest that if we incorporate that into the Spherical Yom Kippur program, it may draw a new demographic, But that was the 2 days a year traditionally that this was done. In the break somewhere, There's a couple hours there. You've got Musaf, Mincha. What are you going to do? So that was, yeah. So that's the 15th of Av. It was a very happy day. Now, the 5th of Av is the day of the passing of the Arizal, who's one of the central figures of Kabbalah. He's buried in Tzfat, in Safed. Now, okay, let's talk about the symbolism of the month and the meaning of the month. So we said a little bit, we just said with Leo, lion, that on one hand it's strength, on the other hand, and it's something majestic and beautiful, on the other hand it's something that you don't want to cross. You don't want to get a lion upset at you. So this month has the potential. It has a lot of strength in it. If it's good, wonderful. If it's going against you, then terrible. But every month has a tribe. We said the previous month we discussed Cheshvan, the tribe was Menashe, and connected with the themes we said, loyalty and smell. Just while I mention again Menashe is also the same letters as Neshama, which is the soul, also representing the most spiritual senses, the sense of smell. It's also connected. Neshima also means breath, also connected to smell. But this month, the tribe is Simeon. Now, Shimon means, anyone know what Shimon means? Shama. It means to hear. Shimon means hearing. Now, let's compare sight to hearing. All you say is differences between sight, seeing, and hearing. In terms of how do I mean? Well, you can get information through seeing and information through hearing. How's it different?
One's visual.
Okay.
Hearing, you can hear something wrong and you can take it in a different,
Okay, so hearing, you might hear something that's not true. Okay, it's true. Yeah.
Also, you can understand it in your brain differently according to what you went through.
So hearing gives you more room to interpret it yourself. Mm-hmm. It's also true. Yeah.
I was just going to say, visually you can understand a concept of a shape.
Uh-huh. So there's some things you can't explain, you mean?
Sorry?
You mean that hearing you can't explain that?
Hearing is... it gives you an idea of pitch, it gives you an idea of loudness, it gives you to some degree an indication of distance. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably a similarity between vision and hearing, is you can actually to some degree understand distance by the closeness.
So in other words, even without, like when you see something you know how far away it is, but even with hearing, okay, that's true if it's a sound, yeah. Normally hearing, yeah, you're right. Normally hearing is, in this context, is that something happens and then someone tells you about it. So in that way, seeing is more first-hand, yeah. And seeing is second-hand.
You're thinking of last night, lightning, thunder. Yeah. First you see.
So first you see, then you hear. The lightning came faster, yeah? Okay, so hearing is distant, number one, because you don't... You hear about what happened. You don't see about what happened. Nowadays we have videos, but normally throughout history, seeing, you have to be there. If you're not there, you can't see it. Hearing, now, we had there was a question that came up, if someone takes a video of you on Shabbos, or let's say we have security cameras in shul, and then the bar mitzvah boy, whatever, he does his thing. Can you then take the video after Shabbos, and now you've got a video of the event? So, not kosher. Okay, it came up recently. Anyway, so hearing is distant. Yeah, because seeing you have to be there to see. Hearing, you can hear later on. Also, it's distant in the sense it doesn't make such an impact on you normally. If you see something happening, then you can never be impartial again. Actually, that's why the law is that if a judge sees the event happen, he can't judge the case. Why? He knows the most information about the case. He would be the optimal judge, you would think. But the answer is he won't be able to objectively consider it when it's so strong, right? How is he going to hear evidence for the defense when he saw the guy, when he saw him stab someone? He can't hear it. He can't hear the defense. So you need to have someone who didn't see, who only heard, and then they're able to objectively consider the defense and the offense, the prosecutor, And that's hearing gives a bit more distance. Now, the other thing about hearing is mostly we've got concave and convex. You know, you go to these amusement parks and they have the mirrors, and suddenly, a lot of these centers, ScienceWorks has it as well, and you look and suddenly, you know what? I should install a mirror like that at home. I look, I'm tall, I'm skinny, this is great. So with mirrors, you could distort reality. Hearing does that same thing. You can hear it like this, hear it like that. So what we want is, if you want the hearing to go well, you've got to have, number one, you've got to hear it accurately. That's the flat mirror. And to do that, it takes humility. Because when we listen to something, we're always giving our 2 cents. If someone's telling me something, I shouldn't be thinking how to answer them. What should I be doing? Listening. So this month, Leo, Av, when is it majestic and beautiful? When it's humble, when it's just listening. But when is it aggressive? When does it cause damage? When it's not really listening, it's distorting things, it's exaggerating. How many fights happen? How much distraction happens because we distort, we hear something and we pass on a little bit more, and then and it grows a tail and grows it. It's very destructive. So we've got to have the humility to really focus on the other one, to sort of restrain our own inner self and listen. Like I may have said before, for those who come to Spirit Grow a lot, I had a teacher, and I asked, he has an amazing memory. Could remember if I said this, he can, like this talk tonight, he can listen and repeat it back almost verbatim afterwards. Not the points, like almost verbatim. And I asked him, how do you do it? He said that the number one way to do it is because he was really totally focused and listening. And that's why these same people who remember hours straight, they can only do it if they're listening to someone who they really respect. Because you need to have that humility. Really, you should have humility before everyone. But the fact is that these same people, they don't remember necessarily everything that they hear on the radio or everything that someone says to them, because they're not really listening. But when they really listen, then they can remember. Yeah, it's a real skill. And that's actually why, if you think about the name Simeon, which is this month of Av, the lion, Leo, the word Shimon can also be divided into 2 words. Sham, Avon, means there is sin over there. So when in listening, there's sin there, there's bad over there. But if you flip around the letters of Shimon, it becomes Sham, Anav. There is humility. There's a humble person. Right? And that's how you flip around hearing from being a destructive lion into being a majestic lion. Okay, so we spoke a little already about dramatization. So if anyone here is in, there's not too many people in movie production, but if anyone is, then this would be a very appropriate month, because it's all about dramatization.
The studio 20th Century Fox, their logo is the roaring of the lion.
So they studied a bit of Kabbalah.
We still study.
Yes, MGM, I meant MGM.
MGM.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the lion, this idea of listening allows for dramatization, and actually, as we go down, in Kabbalah it talks about 4 worlds, and we have in the hallway, there's the 4 trees, each one with different colors, and it says Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah. See if anyone noticed it as they came in. So there's these 4 trees with these 4 Hebrew words, written in English letters, but Hebrew words. And what are they? What's all this about? We should give a whole nother series on the 4 worlds, but suffice it to say that when you have someone totally in a different world to you, or even talk about yourself when you're trying to teach a 2-year-old child. So you have to go through these worlds yourself, because there's you as you are, and then you have to sort of simplify the ideas a little bit and then simplify it more, and until you get to the level of that child. And actually you need to have often more brilliance to explain an idea to a 2-year-old than to explain an idea to a 20-year-old. 20-year-old, if you half get it, you can basically, you don't need to really think. You just say the idea as it's normally presented. And for a 2-year-old, if you want to give over an idea properly to a 2-year-old, you have to really get it deeply and then be able to simplify it. So that's what the 4 worlds are about. They're about godly energy coming down all the way to a physical realm. So we are that 2-year-old. Okay? I actually saw someone, this was a video last night, and this was a chassid saying, you know what I'd like to see? He says, I'd like to see the lights go off and everyone here just get on the floor, get on 4s and start saying, moo, moo. He says, we feel that we're like such wonderful, amazing people. We're so clever. We have such a big sphere of influence. The verse says, Behemoth hayiti imach, that we are animals next to God. So let's just sort of, yeah. Anyway, actually this fellow who said this is actually coming to Melbourne in 2 weeks. Is doing speaking at a summer learning program in the Vertigo Hall, Rabbi Wolf. Anyway, but it was really beautiful how he said it. So let's get off our high horse. So dramatization, yeah. Okay, now finally with our last 10 minutes, and I just added this because someone asked last week that I talk about Libra. I wasn't going to, but I'll add because, responsive to you. As Cole say, we're listening. So Tishrei. Tishrei is a very special month. It's the month where we see, probably, we have less programs in Tishrei than most other months here at Spirit Grow. But one program we have is Yom Kippur, and that involves a lot of people. Another program, Rosh Hashanah, also involves a lot of people. So the aspect I want to talk about here, it means is scales. Now, the idea of scales is when there's equilibrium, when there's balance. A lot of times someone says, you've got someone who's sort of having difficulty, a young man or young woman, and will say, oh, well, we'll marry them off, and then they'll be more comfortable, they'll be more happy, and everything's going to be good. Now, there's often flaws in that argument, right? Of course, yeah, it's a nice thing. Judaism supports the notion of getting married, but you've got to have sort of that you're to a degree you're whole already first. In other words, if you're feeling sort of very off-centered and feeling like just unstable mentally and emotionally, then maybe it's good to sort of take care of that before marriage. Of course, we continue to grow, but to a certain degree, So the idea of scale is connected to the idea of face-to-face. There's a strong idea in Kabbalah and Chassidut that marriage is about panim el panim, face-to-face. This is the secret of Adam and Eve originally being connected, but they were facing opposite directions. Once they were cut, they were separated into 2 beings. Now they're able to come around and face each other. So that's the idea of having your own wholeness, and then with that being able to come together. In other words, you're not independent, you're not dependent, you're not independent, you're interdependent, right? Like they talk about in the self-help books. Interdependent. So there's this idea also of that face-to-face, and in Kabbalah there's different levels, like even in our relationship with God. When it's meant to be face-to-face, when our head is, like, so to speak, either to God's back or our backs are to each other, or even if our head is to God's chest, so to speak, of course God doesn't have a physical body, but it represents something, we could talk more later, then it's not good. The best relationship with God is also when it's face to face. So the idea of a scale, of course, Tishrei, it's a month of judgment in terms of the month that God judges the world and each of us individually, but it's also about balance, and this connects, although we wouldn't necessarily think of it at first glance, but it connects with the idea of touch. The sense of touch is related to Tishrei, and also intimacy is Tishrei. Actually, the tribe for this month is Ephraim. Ephraim means to be fruitful, right? My uncle once went, and those who work in development of institutions may relate to this. My uncle once, he runs a number of institutions in Ohio, in America, but he's a local Melbourne boy. He once went to visit a very prominent philanthropist, and he went in, and the philanthropist was not in a good mood, and told him, he just used a one 4-letter word, and told him basically to get lost, right? To something off. And that was the end of the meeting. Now, well, it was meant to be the end of the meeting. My uncle says, well, if you mean that you want me to be fruitful and multiply, then I thank you for the blessing. Right? They became friendly, and he became a major supporter. Okay, so this month, Tishrei is connected with touch and connected to intimacy and connected to Ephraim, which is to be fruitful and to have children. And one of the things that happens is the first relationship of Adam and Eve was in this month, in Tishrei. And also a lot of the significant women of biblical times, Sarah, Rachel, and Hannah, they all conceive after years of waiting, and they finally conceive in this month. So it has that element to it. Now, what does that mean to us? We've got to have a lesson from everything. So the one lesson, and you can take other lessons from this month, is that idea of that you want to create something, you want to have fruitful collaboration. It comes from a place where we're balanced, we're facing each other. It doesn't come through intimidation, it doesn't come through domination. It comes through a sort of a really positive and equal collaboration. And that's when everyone can really sort of bounce ideas, and that's when new fruit, that's when something beautiful comes out, when there's this respectful and loving connection that allows free-flowing ideas. Okay, so either way, so what have we got in short? I'll just allow a question or two. We'll conclude. We've got the messages we want. Main message for Cheshvan is the idea of permanence and the idea of loyalty, to sort of to stick to something. We start, and every day we start something new. You know, whether this is professionally, every day we've got a whole new direction, and there's good in that. But the lesson from Cheshvan, from Scorpio, Ikar Bayit, the Akra of the Scorpion is the the permanence of the home, is about sticking to something. Then Leo, the lion, is connected to Shimon, is connected to hearing, both in the positive and the destructive and the positive. So what we've got to try to do is hear things in a accurate way and in a positive way, and also before even how we hear it, just first of all to listen. And then finally with Tishrei, which is connected to the scales, which are balanced and also connected to the idea of touch and intimacy and being fruitful. And the idea there is that through relationships where everyone is at an equal footing and respected, that's when we really produce something new. Anyway, question or two, and we'll conclude.
Can I just ask you, you mentioned before the Torah was given, Moses had a book, or some manuscript.
Oh, there was something before?
Yeah.
Well, there was more than one book before the Torah, like Jewish books. There were several Jewish books. One of them, now the book Sefer Yetzirah, it says it's from teachings of Abraham. So whether it was, how it was exactly, if it was he had it in written form or had it in oral form, but there were books before the Torah, yes.
You mentioned in Cheshvan that there were numbers in 358.
Oh yes, 358.
Yes. Are there any numbers that are related to Tishrei?
Oh yeah. First of all, there's a few. First of all, every month has a certain month of the year. Cheshvan is connected also to the number 8, which also represents being beyond. It's the 8th month. Okay, so the 8 in Kabbalah and Hasidut represents that it's beyond regular nature. To rise beyond nature, because 7 is nature, Tishrei is 7 is nature, and 8, Cheshvan, is beyond nature. There's also the letter of the Hebrew alphabet. We've got it printed over here. Tishrei is connected to Lamed, which is 30. There's a lot on Lamed. I couldn't really get into tonight, but Lamed, some say, is actually the origin of the heart, but with the hook on top. It's a heart, but not just, the emotion part, but hooked into mind and even beyond that, mind and even meaning. But then in the heart that we have, we sort of cut off the top of it, and we're left with sort of just the pure, the emotion, which is wonderful, but it doesn't think sort of beyond our current enjoyment. So there's that number as well, the number 30. The Tishrei also, if you notice, is the same letters as Reshit, which means the beginning. And it's the beginning, Adam and Eve, and creation is then. It's also, Tishrei is the first 3 letters are Taf, Shin, and Resh, which are the last 3 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And the reason for that is because we have sort of polar opposites. We have Tishrei and Nisan. You'll see also in the chart that they're opposite each other. The Tishrei is sort of on the bottom right corner, and Nisan is the top left corner. They're opposite. Nisan is when God gives to us, and Tishrei is when we respond. So therefore, in Nisan, the Aleph Bet are in order, Aleph Bet Gimel. In Tishrei, they're exactly flipped around, because that's our response back to God, and therefore the month is Tafshin Reish. For last week, I had, for Av, I'll just say 1 or 2 things for Av. Av is connected to 9, which is, Av is also connected, by the way, to pregnancy, 9 months of pregnancy, where on one hand, during those 9 months, you only have problems from it. Then once the baby's born, hopefully something good comes out of it. So that's actually the letter Tet, which is 9, is meant to look like a womb. So that's some other numbers. But yeah, there are a lot more. And last week even, we were talking about Adar. Adar is Kuf, which is 100, and there's a whole discussion about how Nisan is Hey, which is 5. Adar is Kuf, which is 100. So they're 95 difference, and that 95 is Haman, which is also the numerical value of 95, and a lot of other things. If you want numbers, it's just amazing. Everything is exact. Anyway, okay. One more, we'll finish. Okay. I thank you for your listening. We were talking about listening and your participation, and hope to see you and your friends next week.